Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Will Marm. I'm a U.S. Army veteran and a graduate of Bancroft Capital's Veteran Training Program. I want to welcome you all to this quarter's Patriot Lunch featuring U.S. Army Captain Christine Russ. Christine, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. Looking forward to our dialogue.
That's great, Christine. With this, I want to kind of set the level set with our audience. The purpose of this Patriot Lunch is to build relationships between a star performer transitioning out of the military with corporate America. So we succeed with this Patriot Lunch when those connections are made, relationships are strengthened. So I'd love to connect with Christine with the audience after this webinar, and I encourage you all to get to know her, let her get to know your role, your industry, and that would greatly facilitate her transition into corporate America, where she's going to be a very influential leader. We'll have time at the end of the dialogue for questions and interactions with Christine. Before that, we're going to go through a couple of questions and dialogue and just learn about her and some of the highlights of her career. And so I'd like to provide an overview of Bancroft Capital. Most of you know our mission. Our special mission is Bancroft Capital is a certified service disabled veteran-owned small business operating as an institutional broker dealer and a small investment bank. Through our best-in-class veteran training program, we accomplish our mission. And the mission is to train and empower transitioning veterans to succeed in the financial services industry, period. Bancroft Capitals takes the proceeds of the business to pay for that mission. The business is debt and equity capital markets, public finance, fixed income, secondary trading desk, cash management, and investment banking. So please remember Bancroft Capital if you ever need these services. We are introduced to Christine via the Special Operators Transition Foundation, an organization of which I'm an alum that is purpose-built to take these high-functioning, top-of-their-game transitioning special operators that are serving in America's pointiest tip of the spear and help them translate their experiences and qualities and skills and transition that into and help place them into positions of leadership in corporate America. That's how we come to Christine, and thank you so much. She hails from Denver, Christine, and I won't get into her accomplishments. I'll let her take the glory on that. She's got 6 years in the military. She's a logistician. She's one of the very few airborne and Ranger qualified women. She's got phenomenal experiences and talents that I hope to highlight today with y'all. So, Christine, I'd love to hear more about you.
Thanks, Will. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for logging on and listening. Like Will said, my name is Christine Russ. I was born and raised in Denver, Colorado. I grew up with my parents and my older sister exploring the outdoors. We love to hike, camp, backpack, paddleboard, anything outdoors, you name it, we were there. It's a big part of who I am. I graduated from the University of Colorado Boulder with a degree in psychology, and I did 4 years of Army ROTC. I commissioned into the Army as a logistics officer, and like Will mentioned, I've spent 6 years in the Army. I've held various positions while serving. I was a platoon leader where I was responsible for 47 people and their families. I was an aide de camp to a general officer where I was responsible for a one-star general along with 5 full-bird colonels, and I really just worked daily to synchronize their daily operations and then anything else the one-star general needed me to handle. And then finally, I served as a logistics planner for the 75th Ranger Regiment. Um, it's been a very rewarding career, and I've had so many opportunities that I never expected to have. And I'm just really looking forward to sharing some of those stories with you all today.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Christine. UC Boulder, so it's kind of the
Bravo.
mecca of outdoor adventure and activities and healthy lifestyle, um, which translates really nicely to the military because then you obviously naturally gravitated to um, to a very healthy outdoor lifestyle in the Ranger Regiment. Um, I want to know how you came to the Army. Colorado is a landlocked country, so it's probably a natural, versus like Navy, right? But like, so what brought you to the Army? What the military, and then why the Army, not the Navy or the Air Force? A lot of Air Force there in Colorado as well. So tell me how you decided to join the military.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question, and I think it requires a little bit longer of a story. So when people see me today, I think they assume that I was naturally tough and resilient. They see Ranger Regiment, Ranger School, Airborne School, multiple deployments, and really my story started long before the military on a small mat in a Taekwondo studio when I was 7 years old. And for 11 years, martial arts shaped absolutely everything that I was. I learned discipline long before I knew what it meant, integrity before I could spell it, and perseverance before I faced any sort of real life obstacle. But more than all the punching and the kicking, it was really the first experience that I had with leadership and influential leadership. Growing up, I had multiple coaches, and some of them were women. And these women were powerful in a way that were just absolutely unshakable. They led with confidence and clarity and presence. And they taught me that it's okay to take the first stand and it's important to stand up for yourself and to advocate for yourself. And I watched these women teach rooms full of adults, command respect, and step into the ring with a level of fearlessness that really stuck with me. They taught me that strength could be elegant and that leadership could be compassionate, and that as a girl, I could occupy spaces that people didn't expect me to. And I think that really foreshadowed my time in the Army and in Ranger Regiment. By the time I was a teenager, I was really into kickboxing, boxing, and taekwondo. I was exploring a lot of different martial arts. And at this point in my martial arts career, I was sparring and fighting mostly men. And most people would think that's intimidating, but to me, it felt natural. Again, I think foreshadowing that comfort in a male-dominated role and industry. I never hesitated to throw the first punch or the first kick in the ring. And I think that confidence of understanding controlled aggression, of reading a room, and of staying grounded in chaos really transferred over to the military. And it turns out, don't flinch when a grown man is running full speed at you is basically foreshadowing for Ranger Regiment combatives. So that was a great lesson that I learned as a young girl. And there was a slight twist in my story. After all those years of kicking, when my body was still growing and developing, I actually completely changed the shape of my hips and my pelvis. And it started as a very small ache or pain in my hips, just like after practice. But soon it turned detrimental, and I was unable to sit. I was unable, or I really struggled with walking, running, and I struggled to sleep through the night. So at 18, right after I earned my third degree black belt in Taekwondo, I had my first hip surgery. And that one operation soon turned into seven operations over a span of 2 years. And so two of those surgeries were called PAO surgeries, which at the time were new and they were exploratory and extremely invasive. For the surgery, the surgeons had to pull off my muscles from the bone. Uh, they cut through my pelvis in six different areas and they rebuilt it completely. And it was all built back together with screws and hardware. And then they just put some super glue on the muscles and sewed me up and sent me on my way. Um, but it was the kind of surgery that required epidurals and walkers and wheelchairs. And for a long time, I wasn't even able to sit up at a 90-degree angle. I was always had to be tilted back and so my bones could heal correctly. But this was not like a take a few weeks off. It was a total reconstructive restart. And I like to include this because as a reminder, I was in high school at this point in time, and nothing humbles you faster than trying to find a prom date while you're death gripping your walker in the hallways, like your life and your dignity depended on it. Meanwhile, the surgeon told me that he didn't think I would ever run again. And he didn't think I would ever return to high impact activity, and that I would probably need to prepare myself for a different kind of lifestyle. Um, at this point in time, I had just signed up for Army ROTC, and I had a dream of serving in the United States Army. And I just felt like my future at this point was impossible, and that that dream was basically dead. Um, but I learned a very important lesson in this, and it's that no one gets to decide your limits, not your doctors, not the experts, and certainly not circumstance. So, with this in mind, I returned to the gym on my walker, and I would be there for 2 or 3 hours at a time just because I was moving so slowly. I would lift 5 pound weights, I would sit on the machines, but I would do what I could. And I would try to control the controllables. And that was a huge lesson for me at that point. And I also just learned that tiny habits over time build up into strength. And that mindset carried me into college. It carried me into the Army ROTC program and eventually serving into the Army, which the surgeon told me was something that would probably never happen. Little by little, everything came together. I was able to sit without pain. I walked, I ran, I jogged. And years later, I took my first Army physical fitness test and I ended up maxing it, which was a big deal back in the day. Now people, it doesn't seem like they care as much, but it was a big deal to me. And this year, I actually ran my first ultra marathon of 53 miles. So this story just, the moral of it, this whole situation really shaped who I am today. And it taught me about resilience and controlling the controllables and refusing to let others define my limits. And it all that correlates with how I lead today as well. I think I stay composed in high pressure environments. I lead with empathy because I know what long-term struggle feels like, and I'm able to support people through change and hardship. And then additionally, I can take big and complex problems and I can break them into small, actionable steps. And finally, um, I've learned that when something seems impossible, there's always a creative solution to get it done, especially with the right team by your side.
Yeah, that's wow, quite a powerful statement and testimony you have. Um, took I took I try to take the highlights. There was a lot of really good nuggets in there. Strength, you learned how strength can be elegant. That's really I've never heard that before. I think that's a really powerful saying. Um, and as well, obviously, leadership. You've learned how leadership can be compassionate. Um, and that's obviously really important when you're taking care of platoon with soldiers and their families. Um, and then no one else decides your limits is it's profound because that's that guided what seemed to be very limited options for you as you're recovering, surgery after surgery after surgery. I had to remember the exact proverb, the exact saying. I'm sure you've heard it. Sow a thought, you reap an action. Sow an action, you reap a habit. Sow a habit, you reap a character. Sow a character, and you reap a destiny. So you're well along the way to that, and you've learned a lot on that angle. And that's really great to share with us. I appreciate that. Um, and then so now you're in the Army, and you proved to yourself, and you've recovered, and it's now only, let's just say, a few years after your last surgery.
Yeah.
Um, and I understand the the Ranger school combatives program. I have a couple of new shoulders due to combatives programs. I'm grateful for them. They're definitely stronger than they were before, but there are definitely some hard lessons. Um, uh, you got into the army, which was a goal, and you got there. Where did Ranger School and continuing to press yourself into those limits, those glass ceilings, where did that come into? How did you do that and get there and accomplish that?
Yeah, absolutely. I was really fortunate as a platoon leader. At the time, my battalion commander was prior service infantry, and then he branch transferred to logistics. So, as a logistics officer, he
Hmm.
had the opportunity to go to Ranger School and he earned his Ranger tab. And I showed up to my first unit at Fort Bragg as a brand new second lieutenant, and I did a PT session with him. PT, I'm sorry, it's physical training, what we do in the morning, right? But we did physical training in the morning and I ran a session with him. And I think I put him through his paces. Because after that session, it was about 7 months later after I was a platoon leader, and he emailed me and he said, "See me in my office." Now, this is a lieutenant colonel emailing a second lieutenant, so I was obviously mortified. And I went to his office and he said, "Hey, Christina, you're going to Ranger School. You leave in 2 months. So prep yourself." And at that moment, I could have said no, and I thought about that. Like, I was genuinely really scared. I feel like people build Ranger School up to be something it's not, and you don't know what you don't know. So he told me I was going to Ranger School, and then he tacked on a bunch of pressure. He was like, "We've never sent a female from this unit to go to Ranger School. If you pass, you'll be this big role model, and it'll be a huge deal." So that was hard for me, and it was hard to deal with some of that pressure that he put on me. But it was a great experience. I loved going. If it's all right with you, Will, I'd like to share a quick story about Ranger School and some of the lessons I learned from it.
I would love to. I know the audience would really enjoy that. But real quick, no doubt you're a role model for uh, more than just women who are trying to accomplish and bust through all those glass ceilings, but for everyone on the audience, myself, and everyone who knows and will know your story. I think that's a pretty fair statement to say that you're a role model in all that you have done and will do. But yes, please tell us those Ranger School stories. I'd love to reminisce.
I want to know if you ever experienced anything like this while you were there. But thank you for those kind words. I appreciate it. And before I dive into the story, I just like to tell people, the standard is the same for men and women. There was no deviated standard. I feel like that there is a myth out there or rumors out there about that, and it is the same for everyone. So I did have to shave my head, which was traumatizing. My hair did grow back, which was good. But okay, so we'll start. So for those who don't know, the U.S. Army Ranger School is one of the toughest leadership schools in the world. It strips you of sleep, of comfort, food, and predictability so that it can expose the leader that you are when nothing is left in the tank. Ranger students spend months patrolling through swamps, mountains, and forests, carrying hundreds of pounds of equipment, navigating really difficult terrain, and rotating leadership roles while being evaluated on every decision they make. It's designed to show what kind of leader and follower that you are under pressure. So in Mountain Phase, which is the second phase in Ranger School, I learned a very unforgettable leadership lesson. In mountains, we were issued 4 MREs, and MREs are meals ready to eat. And for those who have never had the joy of eating one of these, it is a single self-contained ration, roughly 1,000 calories of shelf-stable food, snacks, drink mix, and a single entree, all sealed in a brown plastic bag. It's not glamorous, but in Ranger School, it's really like the highlight of every single day. So before we stepped off, the instructors gave us one very clear instruction, and that was on day 4, you must have one unopened MRE. And that was it. One rule, one requirement, and one thing that every ranger was responsible for. So by day 4, we were deep in Dahlonega, Georgia, in the mountains. We were exhausted, calorie depleted, and we were running on about 2 hours of sleep over the last 4 days. At 3:30 in the morning, the instructors lined our entire platoon up along the road, and they said, Rangers, pull out one MRE, one unopened MRE. And the tension was thick. It was palpable because we all knew it was coming. So the instructors start coming down the line and they're grabbing MREs and they're shaking them violently. And for the first 30 seconds, it it was quiet. All you heard were the instructors shaking the MREs, and that was it. And then all of a sudden, MREs were exploding, and there was food just flying all over this road. Pop-Tarts, peanut butter packets, everything that you could imagine. Um, it was chaos. And we all knew that we were in deep trouble because what this meant was that someone did not own their one task. Someone did not follow the one simple standard, and that we were all going to pay for it. So instead of getting our one precious hour of sleep that night, the instructors lined us up and we got smoked in the darkness of the mountains in the freezing rain. And so when I say smoked, I mean we did push-ups. We held our 100-pound rucks over our heads. We put them on the ground and had to pick them up in 5 seconds. And when we failed to do so, they continued that cycle over and over again. Um, by the time the sun started to rise, we were all miserable, wet, soaked to the bone. And we thought we had learned the lesson, but the instructors decided that they were going to drive the lesson home even further. So they called all the Rangers who were in a graded leadership position up to the formation, and they told us that all these Rangers had failed the mission and they would be recycling mountains because the rest of the platoon couldn't follow the one simple standard. And that's a big hit because what that means is that these people, these 6 people, had to stay another 25 days in the mountains phase of Ranger School and redo the entirety of mountains phase because some people couldn't do the right thing. And it's such a simple story, but I feel like it tells so much about leadership. And it shows that leadership isn't tied to a position, but it's a constant responsibility. And that even when leadership rotates, ownership does not. And, Will, we talked about that and how important that is. And also just that the smallest decisions can have a mass consequence for the entire group. And then finally, the lesson learned from this experience was that you don't fail alone and you don't succeed alone. High performing teams succeed only when every individual disciplines themselves for the whole of the group. So, Will, did you ever have the unopened MRE when you were in Ranger School?
I did. I did. And in fact,
Oh, nice.
I, I still have it. This,
That's
this is
awesome.
chili and macaroni. If you want, I can open it
That's
up with
one of the
you.
best ones.
It's the best one because it's got the most calories. So I'm not that hungry. But this is in my go bag if I had one of those, or maybe.
Awesome.
Um, but I 100% had those, and I believe they purposely build in the reason to have group punishments to prove points because I had a few, and I never reminisced with anyone about the group punishments necessarily, but it sounds like there's a common thread here, so maybe that's just built into the program, and it's just you know you're made to feel very special. Yeah, you're right on the leading under pressure. The Ranger School, one of the best ones out there. Um, that sets you up for, challenging things. When you're out and called upon to do things that you've never done before. Um, I'd like to introduce that like deployment to Sudan. You told me a story I think is really important to share. Just how you could just get it done and figure it out and accomplish the mission, which is Ranger School 101. You have to overcome obstacles. How'd you apply those lessons from Ranger School to deployments in the military?
Yeah, and just to piggyback off what you said, I think that going through Ranger School just gives you the confidence to really try anything because I mean, I've never felt so depleted or emotionally and physically exhausted as I did in Ranger. And you know that, hey, if I can make it through that, I can really get through any situation and I can help others get through that situation as well. Um, but yeah, our third story here was my first deployment. Um, so we got notified of the evacuation mission while we were still in the United States, and we had less than 12 hours to get out the door and get overseas to Djibouti. So 12 hours with six people, and it was my first deployment. I was extremely overwhelmed, and it is very difficult to pack for a mission when you have no idea how long you're going to be there and when you're going to come home. And then I was also trying to help and assist um, my general officer get through this. So during this deployment, I served as an aide de camp to a commanding general responsible for synchronizing his efforts across intelligence, operations, logistics, and every interagency partner. So when Khartoum erupted in gunfire, our mission shifted into a full-blown crisis management, strategic improvisation, and logistics problem solving. I want to say nightmare, but we'll say mission. From the general seat, everything moved at strategic speed. Interagency coordination, diplomatic constraints, and multinational partners. From my seat, everything moved at a translate strategic guidance into clear, actionable tasks before anyone panics speed. It felt like a lot of pressure as I was only in the Army for about 2 years at this point. So when we arrived on ground in Djibouti, it became very clear what the number one issue was going to be in this mission. And I'm sure you could guess it was transportation, right? Um, how are we going to move these American citizens from Khartoum to the port of Sudan? And very quickly, it became clear that the situation on the ground was deteriorating. Cars were gone, civilian shuttles were gone, air travel was unsafe. We thought about rail, but we didn't like the idea of rail. So then we stumbled on buses. And we're like, oh, perfect. We're going to bring all these people home via buses. But then comes the next problem. Well, how many buses do we need? And then how do you coordinate? Because at this point, all the buses were gone, or they were moving quickly and they were becoming unavailable. So with this, the entire operation pivoted. Our contracting officers started working the phones with local contacts in Khartoum, coordinating with Sudanese contractors to source buses, something that no one had accounted for in any brief. And contracting in an active conflict zone is exactly as chaotic as it sounds. Phones were down, there is a language barrier, signal was terrible, and also we didn't have any relationships to these people prior to getting there. So how do we know that they're really going to come through and show up with these buses? It required rapid relationship building, real-time verification, and more often than not, asking, hey, just confirming this bus actually exists, right? And it's not just theoretical. So after we thought we coordinated all the buses, our team was very nervous about whether they were going to be there or not the morning that they were supposed to be to help or to really do the evacuation. Lucky for us, they did show up, all 20 buses from a variety of contractors. As the convoy began moving, my job was to give the general a real-time common operating picture, every route deviation, every checkpoint delay, and the classic, hey, we're at a standstill because goats are covering the entire road. Um, all of that information funneled through me. I had to filter the chaos, assess the risks, and provide the general the context that he needed to make informed decisions. And then came the next major problem set, which was life support planning. We knew that if there was any delay in the convoy, that hundreds of people would end up at our doorstep in Djibouti. So we planned for every scenario at once. Where would evacuees sleep if they had to stay overnight? What would they eat and how would we transport it? How would we collect the correct and relevant admin information from each evacuee? How would we provide medical care, especially for elderly or those who are injured? Where were we pulling hygiene support from? Showers, restrooms, water? And if what would we do if those numbers exceeded capacity? And then most importantly, how long could we sustain them before needing to surge more resources? Everything required a primary plan, a backup plan, and a backup to the backup plan, which we learned the hard way with the transportation. In the end, we didn't have to action any of the life support planning because they successfully made it to the port of Sudan. We supported the successful evacuation of American citizens without major incidents, casualties, or any sort of loss accountability. It was a result of disciplined planning, rapid problem solving, and the kind of logistics coordination that requires both precision and adaptability. From this mission, I saw firsthand how critical deliberate logistics planning is not just moving people and resources, but aligning timelines, risks, capability, capacity, and intent across multiple stakeholders while they're viewing the problem from different angles. It's about understanding people, anticipating needs, and leading with clarity and composure.
Right. And probably compassion as well, because when you're bringing families and they're panicking or trying not to, and there's a war
100%.
zone and there's obviously an emergency happening, nobody wants to
Yes.
leave their house, and it probably forgot 1,000 different things. And
Yeah.
like buses are leaving, you can't get back. So you're
100%. And families were separated. So that was a big thing. Obviously, elderlies was like very difficult to move, and people were just exhausted and they didn't have food and they didn't have water. So even just providing those basic things at the buses,
Hmm. How did you make the decision about pets? That's always a big one. You bringing pets?
we did bring pets.
You brought pets? Okay.
If pets could get on the bus, they would go on the bus.
A bunch of big old dogs sitting on laps.
So, well, the interesting thing about yes, the interesting thing, just a bus full of cats. Um, No, the interesting thing that we didn't realize is that we had 20 buses that showed up that morning, and that's the exact amount that we needed. Um, but it was way more than we needed. So people were allowed to
Hmm.
bring a little bit
Yeah,
like, more with them,
that's
which is
okay. Like it's okay to have more. It's definitely not okay to have less.
yes,
And of course it's Africa, so buses are gonna break down, so you've got a bump plan, you need 15, but you have five spares to follow you just in case you gotta start, you know,
yes,
ditch one bus on the side of the road because it broke down.
yes,
You know, it's
100%.
not like there's a depot level maintenance there, take it back to the dealer and get it repaired.
Yes. And also really like you learn about logistics when you're at basic officer leadership course, which is where you go as a second lieutenant.
Mm,
But I don't think you really learn about life support planning. So that was my
mm,
first experience ever seeing that all in action.
mm,
And then that experience was great because then later on in Ranger Regiment, when that was more common, I at
mm,
least had like the right mindset to think about it, if that makes
mm,
sense.
Yeah, right. Um, we've got about 6 minutes, 5, 6 minutes left. I want to ask briefly your big takeaway with the Ranger, because we've got a couple of questions that have lined up here.
Okay.
Um, Ranger Regiment. So one of what, four women to have served in the Ranger Regiment. So you're breaking barriers. What was that like? That must have been quite an experience. I think you're still there now.
Yeah, it was an experience. I won't go into the full story because we don't have the time. Um, but I think Ranger Regiment was great because it taught me to have thick skin, which I think is important. But really, my takeaway from Ranger Regiment and my big lesson learned is that trust is created through consistency. And people trust a leader who shows up the same way every single day. If people can count on you to be where you say you're going to be in the right uniform and going above and beyond, but just being the same person every single day, they're going to build trust with you and they're going to learn to rely and count on you. And that was like my biggest takeaway from serving with the 75th Ranger Regiment is, hey, show up every morning at 6, put in extreme effort for physical training in the morning, give 100% effort during the day. And then most evenings, I would stay longer, go for a second workout, try and work harder. But people saw that and they respected it and it built trust. Because I mean, in an environment like that, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, trust is earned. It's not given.
Yeah, that's those are prescient statements and lessons. Thanks for sharing those with me. Um, we have a question that says your strength and determination are unquestionable and very admirable. Intellectually, what's your strength? And then the follow on is where's your interest in the business world?
Okay, great question. Intellectually, I think that my strength comes into operations. I've now had 6 years of experience dealing strictly with operations. I would say that logistics is a close second. I got a lot of global supply chain lessons in the 75th Ranger Regiment, but I would say for 6 years, I've been dealing with operations every single day. So that's something I feel very comfortable with and I feel very competent and confident with. And then getting out of the military, just to be perfectly clear, um, I have never worked outside of the military. The military is really the only thing that I know. So right now I'm spending time trying to look into numerous roles and industries to try and find a good fit. I've talked to nonprofits, I've talked to tech companies, I've talked to finance and consulting, really just to understand what's out there and where I could make a difference and where I could fit. And I think that for me getting out, I would really like to start not near the bottom, but I would like the opportunity to start at the bottom, see how a company works, and then learn and grow, and within a few years be in a leadership or management type position.
Yeah, I understand too. That's necessary. It's tough to come right in and lead a team when you got to know what the business looks like.
Yeah,
And as we spoke, in most of America, logistics and operations are very close. It's virtually the same thing, particularly in logistical companies like distributors and suppliers, etc. Um, I would also say your immediate skill set with small unit leadership and being able to just figure it out. As you had to figure out in Sudan, as you had to figure out what it takes to succeed in the world's most elite raiding force, okay, with the 75th Ranger Regiment, and probably history's most elite raiding force as well. Um, that application into corporate America is huge. I think the angle would be, you'd probably be more comfortable at a small team. Um, than jumping into a huge organization, which I've seen people do, and it's challenging to go from a small team to a huge organization. Are you limited geographically
no,
in
I am
going
not
west?
limited geographically. Since I'm from Colorado, I would like to go out west since I've been in the the humid, hot South for a couple of years. But I'm definitely not limited geographically. I'm open to moving anywhere.
Yeah, and so for the audience, like we were just chatting, on our prep and getting to know each other, and Christine, she's like, ideal. I could live in a like what do you say, Winnebago or RV or something, travel around, and I'm like, there are
Hunter
jobs that do
van.
that. I promise. I don't know. I mean, if there were, maybe I'd find one too. But if maybe you could hire me working for Winnebago or something. But it's like a really cool, or just visit the work sites around the country. Like there's a ton of small team, work sites all around the country that have to be managed and like you said, leadership is presence. Um, so uh, minimally limited geographically, and so I like appreciate that question and your answer. Are there any other questions out there from the audience? And you can type it or just, unmute yourself. I think Kate might, maybe. Great to see you, Kate, and Mel and the rest of the team, and some of the recidivism right here is good. um, okay, so with that, I think I'm gonna wrap it up. Christine, did you have anything final here before I close it? Would you like to say anything to the audience or?
I just want to say thank you so much for dialing in and listening. It's really fun to be able to share this, and it's been a great career. So to be able to wrap it up and share some of my stories is something I really appreciate.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you. Thank you for your time on this. To our friends in the audience, we hope this Patriot Lunch has provided you an opportunity to enjoy this small group dialogue with Christine Roos. She is an accomplished veteran, as you can tell. She's about to join your ranks. So please, build a, like I said, we succeed when relationships are built and strengthened. So I'll connect you all afterwards, and would love for her to learn about your role in industry and just explore that. That's my win for this. Christine, thank you for freely choosing to dedicate your life to serve our nation. Your service to our nation has just started, and you've got the rest of your life to continue in your own way. So look forward to seeing how that goes. Christine, on behalf of Bancroft Capital, thank you. And on behalf of corporate America, thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Will. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'll send the replay link with this, with the follow-up note. Try this AI deal afterwards too. It summarizes it nicely as well. Um, with your contact info as well, I'll send that to Christine, to the audience members, and stay tuned for the next Patriot Lunch. It's in mid-March. Feel free to forward that invite out to your networks, please. To the audience members, please send that out. We want to get some run on this and provide a better exposure and network opportunity for the transitioning veteran. So mid-March. Hope you had a great time, and thank you for your attendance, and Christine for everything you've done.
Thank you. Thank you so much.